Hello! So, I wanted to go over some of the changes that Guardian Druid got in the Undermine patch. I had been doing some rep grind stuff, delves, things like that. Um, so, decided just to bring this character through as my first character to the Undermine, and I have done I've done a few things. I've done the intro. Obviously, I've gotten to the point of doing dailies and the rep grind and all of that. So I've had a chance to kind of play around with some things. I double checked, kind of cross referenced some things I was noticing with the patch notes, which I don't normally look at because I like to I just like to be surprised and see what they do from patch to patch. So normally I don't look at those ahead of time, and some things kind of made more sense. I'm not going to cover everything in the patch notes, but since I did make a state of and kind of talk about Guardian before the new patch came out, I wanted to kind of go over some of the changes. So this is going to be more of like a theory crafting stats oriented video, so beware. So first of all, as far as stats, I have been able to play around more since the state of video and have figured some things out. So critical strike I need for Dream of Cenarius, which allows me to use regrowth in bear form, and it does that based on my critical strike chance. So I have figured out that 22% seems to be the amount that you need, at least 20% to start with. I've been going between 21 and 22% as I've been swapping out gear, and that seems to be working. 21%, I don't feel like I'm getting the every 20 seconds that the passive will proc, but it definitely seems like I do with 22%. So I would say try to get as close to 22% or over 22% as you can, and you'll more or less have a guarantee that you'll always be able to use regrowth every 20 seconds. It also depends, because it's based on your critical strike chance. It also depends on the enemy that you are fighting against. So bear that in mind as well. I have noticed a bit of a difference there. Bosses or rares, things like that, definitely it seems like it procs more often, which would make sense. They're tougher, so your critical strike chance is going to be working differently than it will around mobs that are more closer to your level. The other thing, which I don't think I'd had much time to figure out before I did the state of, was mastery. Mastery seems to be, that was the next stat that I wanted to work on after critical strike. And it seems like 10% seems to be what you want to aim for. So your mastery does three things. It increases your health, your healing received, and your attack power. And 10% seems to be where it made a noticeable difference, and I've had an easier time doing things. So I've seen Guardian Druids in raids throughout different expansions, so I knew what they could kind of do, so that was kind of what I was aiming for, was something that was a bit more self-sufficient, a bit able to survive, and 10% seems to be where all that seems to kick in. So I had largely had my mastery below 10%. So as I said, I can tell a noticeable difference. So I would say 20 to 22% for critical strike and 10% for mastery, and then just kind of let everything else fall where it will. After mastery, versatility, I've noticed as I've again swapped gear out, been really trying to prioritize critical strike or mastery. Some things have had haste and mastery, some things have had versatility and critical strike. It just kind of depends as gear often does. So I would say versatility would probably be the next thing, and then really after that, just let everything else fall where it lies. You get dodge based on your agility, so that will be taken care of for you. Avoidance, leech, haste doesn't really seem to matter much. I've had haste that was below 10%, and then I've had haste that, as you can see, is close to 15%. Haven't really noticed much of a difference. So, with Rage, I don't normally play a class that uses Rage, so I'm not sure exactly if haste really factors into anything. I've been mainly focusing on critical strike and then mastery, and then I've just gotten to see, just kind of through prioritizing the other two, that versatility seems to generally be good. So whether you have a little or whether you have a lot seems to make a difference. Alright, so there were two abilities that I wanted to mention because they do seem to be working better in the new patch, and that is Frenzied Regeneration and Moonfire. Now, most all of the Guardian abilities got some sort of increase to their damage, so that is worth noting. Frenzied Regeneration, though, I was pleasantly surprised. I had said in the state of that it didn't seem to work all that well on its own, and I still think that's true. However, I did discover that it works with Brush Off, which is a Kalteran passive, which increases versatility, and when you take damage, heal for 2% of that amount over 4 seconds. So I've started keeping it active more, and between that and Brush Off, it does seem to do more. I had mentioned that I was using it also with Renewal to kind of top up my health when need be, and I still do. I kind of use this combo when Rage of the Sleeper is on cooldown, which reduces damage, grants leech, so improves healing, and does damage. So I will use Rage of the Sleeper and Bark Skin. So in Delves, when I have quite a few, I'm fighting fighting mobs, or I am on the boss. This is Rage of the Sleeper and Barkskin is what I will use. That is kind of my all-out solution to everything. If I can't do something with those two active, then it's just not something I'm going to be able to do right at that moment. I either need to go back and reset the delve at a lower level, which I've had to do Few and far between, but I have had to do that once or twice. In addition to that, Moonfire, which I also said, you can take quite a few talents that work with basically Moonfire because it's arcane damage, and that's the only arcane ability you have as Guardian. It did get an increase, as I said. It got the largest increase of anything, and this does seem to work better. So I have changed my rotation to include Moonfire as much as possible because you have Moonless Night. Your direct damage, melee abilities against enemies affected by Moonfire cause them to burn for an additional 20% arcane damage. So with the increase from the patch, which I believe was 20%, if I remember correctly, it does a lot more. You can almost one-shot enemies now. So, as I said, I will use Swipe, Thrash, and then I still have a tendency of using Mangle first just to make sure I get that additional bleed damage. Or get that additional damage for targets that have a bleed, which is what Thrash applies to them, is a bleed. And then I will use Moonfire, use Mangle again, and then Maul. And Maul is where the big damage comes from. Running through Moonfire, a second Mangle, and then Maul, it almost completely one-shots some targets. Which is nice, which is not something that happened before. So, I think that was it for the talents. Nothing else, as I said, really changed. But I was pleasantly surprised that Frenzied Regeneration seems to be doing better. And that I'm able to use it in one of 3 ways. So, Frenzied Regeneration with Brush It Off is kind of my general approach. I will try to keep it active, depending on how difficult the target is. And then Frenzied Regeneration and Renewal just to keep my health topped up if need be. And then I only use Rage as a Sleeper and Bark Skin kind of together as like my cooldown. So, only in extreme circumstances. So either on large trash pulls or against some kind of a difficult single target. So a rare, a boss, something like that. If we look at the talents, which I'm not going to go over all the changes, just the ones that I took as part of the kind of setup that I've been using, or the build that, the ones that supported the build that I had. If you were to compare the talents now with the talents before the patch, you will see that they mostly moved around talents on the Druid side. That was the only ones I had to reset, essentially. The only thing I lost, I was able to keep everything except for Starfire. They added Moonkin form for some reason. And I had taken some abilities in the balance side just to have something in case I wanted to run older content, farm something. I wasn't sure what I was doing with this character. I ended up liking Guardian more than I thought I would. So, I had Starfire, Star Surge. If you move Sunfire up to where Moonkin form was, That's where it was, and then where Sunfire is now, there was a talent you could take that made Sunfire a passive, so it would spread to other targets. So those three seemed worthwhile if I was going to run old content. However, if I was going to do it now, I'd probably just do it in Guardian, because I'm comfortable with Guardian, and you have Swipe and Thrash. So as long as you have good AoE to do old content, you're usually fine. I would spend the talent points for Star Surge and Starfire in something else, but I have no idea what else I would put it into. Nothing else really applies to the setup that I have for Guardian right now, so I'm just leaving him. Just kind of leaving him right now. The newer ones that I took were so you had well-honed instincts, which used to be down here, where fluid form is, which is new, which I'm not using. They added perfectly honed instincts, so I actually had to go back. I actually look at a change log. I actually had to look this up in Wowhead and then look at the change log to see what they changed, and it is the duration. Used to be 135 seconds, according to Wowhead, from patch 11.0.5. They brought that back down to what I can tell, from what I can tell, is the original 90 seconds. This is saying it used to be a conduit ability. I do not remember that because I did not play Druid in Shadowlands. But I thought that was an interesting thing to mention. Because a lot of conduit abilities used to be part of your artifact weapon, if I remember correctly. So, and now you have perfectly honed instincts. So it basically removes the when you fall below 40% health, and just allows it to be triggered every 90 seconds. So, not terrible. And in addition to that, if we go over here, they redid the passive that works with Frenzied Regeneration, that I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce. So that it heals you over 2 additional seconds and causes rejuvenation and regrowth at 200% effectiveness, which kind of threw me because I couldn't figure out where rejuvenation was coming from. Regrowth I'm using myself, but I could not figure out where rejuvenation was coming from. So this has helped tremendously. And then the other thing, if I can find it. Oh yeah, there we go. Usurk's Fury. Thrash and Maul grant you an absorption shield for 20% of the damage dealt for 15 seconds. Now, I've noticed two things. Now, again, this didn't seem to be something they mentioned they had made any changes to. However, I'm noticing it more, so I don't know if that has to do with my attack power since it's damage dealt. The other thing I've noticed is this will stack. So that 15 seconds can become, or the absorption shield, can stack on itself and become quite worthwhile. So I was excited to see that. It was very reminiscent to me of playing Blood Death Knight. So I thought that was worth mentioning. In addition to that, the newer ones, so I took Typhoon just because a lot of um, classes or specs I play now have some sort of a knockback, so I just took it to have it. And they added Gale Winds, which increases the radius and range by 5 yards, which is helpful because it only affects targets in front of you, knocking them back and reducing their movement speed. Yes. So there you go. And I think that was it. I looked up the talents I had during the state up just to make sure I took the same things, wasn't missing anything. And yeah, that was pretty much it. So overall, I would say Guardian got a bit of a boost in the 11.1 patch. So, as I said, I've been running around Undermine, doing quests, and trying to get to the rares before they are down in like 3 seconds, because there are a ton of people here, as you could imagine. This is still the first week of Undermine. So, yeah. So there you go. There's a little bit of a kind of a status update on it. Haven't done one of these since Battle for Azeroth. So, yeah, that was kind of nice for a change. So, hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was helpful for you. And thank you for watching.